Good evening, folks. Got a quick update to the auto breeding setup that I have going on downstairs. Getting ready to take a trip down to the States to look at fish and have a bit of a vacation. So I decided to get these tanks ready to go in advance. I ordered a couple of 1-inch or a couple of drill bits that are appropriate for a 1-inch bulkhead. So I'll be drilling both of these tanks at some point, but given that they have to come from China or from Hong Kong, I don't suspect that they will be ready in time for the trip. So I've decided to fill them up anyway. I can always re-drill at a later date. It's not a big deal. This will just kind of allow me to have some tanks that are ready to receive fish from when we get back if we decide to bring anything back. So these tanks will be set up the same way that I've had other auto tanks done before. I'm using up the last of my peat moss here. So both of these tanks here are set up right now with about 1.5 inches or so of dry peat moss. Next step is to take that bucket of RO water there and just start drenching the moss. That will allow most of the... I'll put in enough water so that the peat moss is actually soaked. Last time I did this, I pre-boiled it to get a lot of the water discoloring tannins out. This time I'm not going to bother. I'm actually going to embrace my inner tannin and leave it in there. So I'll leave it soaking for a couple of days to make sure everything stays waterlogged. If you don't actually boil the peat, it'll take quite a while to get waterlogged. It'll allow me to pick off most of the floating bits. So a lot of the floating bits are going to be chunks of wood and bits and pieces that get mixed in, which, though not the end of the world, I wanted to try and get out of the substrate just because it's a source of contaminants, or however you want to call it, but potentially leading to nitrate spikes I'm not looking for, even though I'm going to be adding wood back into the tank, so it really is a bit of an exercise in tradition rather than any sort of real goal. So anyway, about to soak these, get them ready to go. Then I'll come back. I'll probably add some hang-on backs for circulation, just empty without running any sort of foam or anything, because the water will be quite cloudy at first. Then I'll cap the peat with a bit of sand and then start introducing some plants. Afterwards, if I do bring some fish back, I can always pop some sponge filters into them that I've got in my main display tank upstairs, sitting in the sump, ready to go. And we should be ready to go and to accept fish. So that will be updated as soon as I'm finished. So we have the peat all nice and flooded now. You can see that there's a layer of water underneath the peat, which is quite buoyant. Straight out of the box, it comes in quite a few of these large chunks, and there's bits and pieces of wood and things like that are mixed in. So I just like to go in there with my hands and break up the chunks. Helps to get it all evenly soaked and make sure that there isn't anything that stays dry. So just go through the tank afterwards, break up all the big chunks and leave it to soak at least overnight. In my case, I'm not in a big rush, so I'll probably come back to it tomorrow, add a bit more water if it needs it, and see how we're making out. So I've got all the water mixed into the peat. I've used RO water to make sure that we're not adding anything into the tank that I don't know about. One of the goals, or one of the commonalities that people have reported for those that have had the opportunity to breed autos before, is most spawnings occur at a pH at highest of 7.5. So most people actually have more success towards 6, even lower in some cases, depending on the species of auto. So in order to provide that environment, I can't use any of my locally available soils here. I'm not actually a huge fan of using soils in planted tanks personally, though it has its advantages, and it does have a few disadvantages. And I find a lot of our soils, and topsoils in particular, are treated with something that really raises the KH value, so the buffering capacity of the water, which means it's great for planted tanks that you want to have the pH stay around 8, 8.5, but for much else, you sort of end up fighting your water a little bit. So this will be, the peat I find is a great growing medium for plants. Relatively inexpensive up here, actually really inexpensive up here. Really easy to find, and it's a Canadian product, so its availability is pretty easy up here. And I've used it in a number of tanks so far, so got it all saturated out now, and we'll check back in when everything's ready to go.